So key points about natural selection. I'm going to give you guys 4 key points regarding natural selection to occur. And I want you to know these 4 key points. That sounds like a great short answer response that I can ask you guys in your exam. Natural selection is going to affect individual organisms. So you're choosing the traits that that organism has. Are those traits going to allow that individual to be successful in that environment? But it is not the individual that contributes to the concept of evolution. It's populations. It's a whole population, all the individuals in that population that contribute to evolution. A population is a group of, so what is a population? I keep using that term. A population is a group of individuals of the same species. They do have to be the same species in order to be part of that population that live in the same area and they interbreed with each other. Evolution occurs over time as traits that are more favorable, I'm going to coin these adaptive traits, they become more common in the group. And other traits might change or disappear. It just depends on the environment. Thus, evolution is a generation-to-generation change in populations. Know that it is not that single generation where we see evolution occurring. Let me go back to the previous image. I had to show you multiple generations to show you that evolution occurred. I couldn't see that by just looking at this generation. I have no idea. I have to compare across all generations. So it is a generation-to-generation change, and not within the individual, but within the population as a whole. So let's actually look at this image before I go even further. Here I have moths that I'm showing you, and here's generation 0, so the original generation. It looks like I have some white colored moths, lots of white colored moths actually, and I have one brown colored moth in this population. This is an individual in that population, this is an individual in that population. If I look at all individuals, these are the same species moth, living in the same area, this is a population. And it looks like I have the white phenotype being favored here. If I look at the environment, it looks like here's this tree over here, and this tree is a lighter white color. Maybe that's why these white moths are favored in this population, so they can blend in with this tree. Kind of avoids predation for those guys. That brown one not being as successful. Okay. Well, then let's say that several generations later, the environment changes and that tree turns from a white color to a darker color. Well, now that that tree is a darker color, that brown allele that that moth originally had is now more successful because they're able to blend in with their environment. So that allele, that brown allele, giving the brown phenotype, it is going to be selected for. And I can actually see generations later, those brown moths are going to be selected for, and natural selection is going to be in their favor. They are able to reproduce more successfully than those white moths. So over time, within the population, I can see evolution occurring within this moth. Example. So, key points about natural selection then, in order for natural selection to occur. Nature selects the best traits based on the following criteria, these 4 points. Number 1, individual organisms in a population are naturally different from each other. So you have to have all 4 be met in order for natural selection to occur. You have to have a difference. In the population, there must be different traits in order to select 4. If all the individuals in that population were clones of each other and all had the exact same traits, you're not going to have a trait be selected for since they all have the same traits. You have to have different traits. Like this population here, I have brown phenotype, I have the white phenotype. There's a difference in individuals. So that's the number 1 criteria. Number 2, traits must be heritable. They must be passed from parent to offspring. So sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction as well. The offspring inherit the parent's traits. I taught you guys this with Mendelian genetics and with meiosis and how we see that on a chromosomal level. 3rd criteria. There must be competition. There must be a selection pressure. So there has to be conditions that make some traits more favorable than others. So we call that competition of resources. So here, the resource I'm showing you is going to be camouflage from predation, for instance. And so there's a competition who could be camouflaged better than other individuals in that population. So usually competition is for those kind of examples. Food is another great example. Who can acquire food better than others? That giraffe with a longer neck is going to acquire food a bit better than that giraffe with a shorter neck. So there is a selection pressure between organisms in a population. Okay, that's the third criteria for natural selection to occur. The last criteria is that that trait must provide an ability for that individual to survive and reproduce more offspring. Basically, what I'm saying about that is, quote unquote, survival of the fittest. We call this evolutionary fitness. That trait must be better for that individual to survive in that environment. And with that higher survival rate comes a higher reproductive rate for that individual, becomes a higher offspring chance for that individual to lead. Hence, those traits will be acquired more readily within the population, and the traits will be spread across generations over time. So that trait must be better, must provide an evolutionary fitness. Okay, so those are the 4 key points of natural selection. I can ask you a great short response question. List the key points of natural selection. Give me an example.